You're listening to Back.chat, the podcast that takes you backstage for a chat every Friday on all major platforms. Recorded in Dublin, Ireland, and broadcast around the world. Join Michael O'Reilly and his guest weekly to discuss the entertainment realm and all of its secrets with leading musicians, actors, and entertainers. Before this episode begins, follow us on Instagram at Back.chatpodcast and check out our Facebook. But for now, you're listening to Back.chat.
Hello and welcome back to Back.chat, the podcast that takes you backstage for a chat every week on all major platforms. This week's guest is one of the best performers I've ever seen live, a good friend of mine and a mind-boggling magician. He's performed for people like Matthew McConaughey, Ellen DeGeneres, Nicole Scherzinger and Regina King, to name a few. He has done everything from appearing on CSI Miami to advising Woody Harrelson and the cast of Now You See Me and Now You See Me 2. He has toured the UK and Ireland extensively, performing to sold out venues every night. Now he has taken his magic and mental abilities to the world via Zoom with a series of gripping brain hacking shows. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's Keith Barry. Keith, how are you?
Great, thanks. Not too bad at all, actually. I'm here in my cabin that I've been stuck in for the past 6 months or whatever it's been. So morning, noon, and night, this is where you'll find me.
Yeah, it looks great behind you. I see the set, and it's a familiar setting for me because I was tuning into some of the shows over Halloween, which are absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, actually, due to the success of those shows, because they were my first public shows that I've put on sale, I actually have another one on sale now for December 23rd. So yeah, it's kind of a Christmas experience, December 23rd at 7 p.m. So if people want to catch that one, they just have to have a quick look at eventbrite.ie, which is where we have it listed. You can get tickets there as well. So yeah, look, I pivoted online pretty early with the pandemic, kind of April time, I suppose. And I've been lucky enough that, through a lot of hard work and developing material that works online, I've been working for a lot of big brands around the world as well. So the likes of Google, PayPal, Comcast, Dell, Facebook, TikTok. So it's great,
Wow. And what's it like taking your profession, especially the individuality that comes with your profession with the likes of mentalism and, brain hacking, if you will? What's that like across a screen as opposed to in person? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I suppose there is a big difference. I mean, for me, I'm used to being on large stages. So, for example, the likes of the Olympia Theatre in Dublin, which takes close to 1,500 people. And there's an energy about that you can't recapture. So, for example, I think people are really enjoying the intimacy of meeting me up close and personal online. And they're enjoying that aspect of it. So for me, look, it's in my DNA to be on stage. I love being on stage. But right now, given the limitations that we're in, Zoom and these other platforms are the next best thing. And it's working brilliantly well because I developed work and material that works online. So I didn't try and hack what I was pre-existingly doing and put it online. I developed tricks, magic, mentalism that works through the virtual medium,
Excellent. And I saw a really cool adaptation of that on the Ellen DeGeneres show a few weeks ago, and congratulations on that.
Thanks. Yeah, it's crazy. That was actually my 5th time on Ellen DeGeneres, but it had been about 12 years before, the last time that I was on Ellen, it had been 12 years. So, it took quite a bit of work to get on, but it was kind of just so weird and surreal performing on Ellen DeGeneres from my cabin in my back garden. But yeah, I mean, the reaction has been fantastic to that and got a lot of inquiries from the US as a result,
And what was it like performing on the Ellen DeGeneres show for the first time, kind of all those years ago?
All those years ago, yeah, it was nerve-wracking back then because, she was a massive, huge, big deal back then and still is now. She's one of the biggest brands in the world, certainly as a daytime talk show. For sure. And back then, I would have been in my early 20s, bleached blonde hair. Yeah. I had a boy band look going on, if you like, a bad boy band look, I can say. But yeah, look, I used to get very nervous all those years ago, and I still get nervous now, even though I'm obviously massively more experienced. But I've learned over years to turn those nerves into positive energy now. So I'm able to flip that switch where the nerves don't overtake me and I could just have fun,
Yeah, and it wasn't, obviously, you did spend a long time over in the US doing, major television appearances, and one of my favorite, I suppose, appearances you've done, and it's, you know, on YouTube, it's one of the most viewed TED Talks of all time. What was
Yeah,
it?
it's crazy. I'm still hanging in there after all these years because that TED Talk was filmed. I think it was in 2004. I did two TED Talks, but the first one I think was 2004. And all these years later, 16 years later, yet still, I think it's number 22 out of 25 TED Talks. But it's amazing because like number 21 is David Blaine, and you know some other people in there who I highly, highly admire are in that top 25 TED Talks of all time list, which TED put together themselves. So yeah, to have views up to around 25, 30 million views, it's just a bit mind boggling, you know?
Yeah, and kind of staying on your work in the US, one of my favorite things that you have been involved in, because it's just the grasp, or the enormity of it, was Now You See Me and Now You See Me Too. How did that come about? Like, what was that phone call or email, or how did that
Yeah,
come
it
to fruition?
was the guy who worked on Now You See Me One. His name is Brian Tucker, and Brian's an Irish guy. And you know, when they were started to name some names of people that they wanted to consult on Now You See Me, he threw my name into the mix. So I think it was a little bit of the Irish looking after the Irish in Hollywood. So still to this day, you know, thanks to Brian Tucker. And you know, but like everybody else who went for the role of being a consultant, you know, I had to go in and have a big meeting with Lionsgate and the producers and all the rest of it. So I went in, met them all, and gave them some ideas for the script. So rather than doing what I knew my contemporaries would do, and my estimations were right, I thought they would go in and perform magic for them. And they did. So because I learned this after the fact that, you know, I'm not going to name names, but some very well-known names in the industry also pitched to be consultants. And they went in and they did loads of tricks. But rather than me doing loads of tricks, I just went in with the script, which I'd read, a rough draft of the script. I pointed out 3 spelling mistakes that were in the script, which was an unusual thing to do. And they were like, well, it's only a rough draft. And I was like, yeah, well, I just want you to know I'm a man of detail. I was actually proving a point there that they needed to understand that I'm a person who was really into detail. And then also I didn't do any tricks. I just gave them ideas for the movie. And I'm going to say about 15 minutes into the meeting, when the producers just stood up and said, all right, the meeting's over, Keith's got the gig, cut his deal, let's move on. And that's how Hollywood is. So that's how I landed on Now You See Me 1. And then it just snowballed on from there into Now You See Me 2, where I worked from day zero, really, with the writer Ed Solomon of Now You See Me 2. So I worked from day zero all the way through to the delivery of the script. And then I worked on set in Longcross Studios in London for the 3 months of filming as well. So that was an amazing experience.
And kind of through that experience, you sparked a bit of a friendship then with Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, I was just talking to him the other day, actually. I invited him to the show that you were at, 11 o'clock Halloween night, which would have been, I guess, probably 4 o'clock his time. He lives in Hawaii, but he's not in Hawaii at the moment. He told me where he is. I've just forgotten. He's filming a movie anyway, somewhere in Middle America. But he said it was too early for him. So 4 o'clock during the day was too early for Woody Harrelson to come to my show. But yeah, so look, me and Woody are good friends now. You know, I'd see him maybe once or twice a year, depending on whether he comes to Ireland or if I'm in the States, or we end up meeting up in the strangest of places. Sometimes we end up in London just at the same time when we might hang out or whatever. But he's a great guy, and you know, I have nothing but huge admiration for him as an actor as well, because you know, when he was playing the magician, mentalist, hypnotist, and Now You See Me, you know, when we go out and about to a restaurant or a bar or whatever it was, he would always be trying tricks on people. And actually down to the extent that on David Letterman, I taught him a trick, and he did that trick on Letterman, which again, people can find on YouTube, and he fooled the Letterman. Yeah.
And you're talking about meeting Woody in strange places. Maybe one of the strangest places he was seen was at the bingo in Waterford. Do you want to tell me how that kind of came about?
Yeah, so we were at the start of Now You See Me 2, and we were due to start filming on the Monday of, on a Monday, we were due to start filming Now You See Me 2, and on the Thursday before that Monday, I just said to Woody, look, I'm going to Waterford this weekend. So this is in London, we were all in London. And I said, I'm going to Waterford this weekend. I'm doing this huge stunt in front of 10,000 people on the streets of Waterford. It's going to be amazing. I said, is there any chance you want to jump over? And he just said, yeah, no problem. And then I got into a little bit of trouble with Lionsgate because Woody He's the type of character that, you know, if he goes away for a weekend, he might not come back for a bit longer than that weekend. But we were due to start filming on the Monday. So the producers of Lionsgate were like, Keith, you know, we're starting on Monday. If Woody's late, it's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, you're responsible for him solely in Waterford. I was like, well, hang on here a minute. You know, he's his own man. So he'd be looking after himself. But look, we had a great fun. He came over, and I didn't tell anybody in Waterford that he was coming. So we had 10,000 people on the streets of Waterford. I was performing this huge, big stunt where, first of all, I made it snow, like magically snow for all 10,000 people. And then I was hanging upside down from a crane doing this crazy stunt. And then just before I did that, I said, ladies and gentlemen, I brought a friend over from London. Just give him a round of applause. It's Woody Harrelson. And of course, everybody went nuts.
Crazy, yeah.
And then afterwards, Woody's a vegan. And it's hard to find good vegan food in Waterford. So at the time, a restaurateur that I knew, David Dennison, he had a restaurant down in the Forum. So the Forum used to be a theater, but it had since been converted into a restaurant. So anyway, cut a long story short, upstairs above the restaurant, there's a bingo hall. So after we had our vegan food in the restaurant, I said to Woody, there's a bingo hall upstairs. You want to go play bingo? So they opened up the bingo hall for us. So there was like 4 of us sitting there playing bingo at 2:00 in the morning or whatever it was, you know.
And like you worked and performed with like you know, amazing people, as I mentioned in the introduction. And I think watching some of those performances on YouTube, seeing you live a few times, one of the best part about a good trick or a good performance is the reaction. Do you have a favorite reaction someone has given you before, particularly someone that people might know at home?
Yeah, I think, look, there's 2. Immediately, I can tell you exactly what they are that stand out in my head. From my whole career, there's 2 reactions. One was, I was the first person to drive a car blindfolded with a celebrity in it. Because I wrote that piece back in 2006 for my CBS show, Extraordinary. And you can find it again up on my YouTube channel. And it was when I drove Nicole Scherzinger from the Pussycat Dolls, screaming her head off. Because I was blindfolded, properly blindfolded, and she checked the blindfolds, so she knew that I couldn't see. And I was driving at 60 miles an hour down a canyon road. And, you know, people don't understand, you know, if you drive 60 miles an hour down this road anyway, it's dangerous. Yeah. So it was double danger, triple danger, whatever way you want to look at it. You know, because if I just misjudged it even by a couple of inches, we're going off a cliff edge. So that was amazing. I kind of look back at that really fondly. And Nicole's a good friend now. You know, that was 2006, 14 years later, we're still friends. And then the second one was probably the highlight, really. It was on Now You See Me Too. And, you know, I didn't really work with Michael Caine or Morgan Freeman. I worked with the 4 Horsemen, as they're known as. So I worked with all of the, you know, those actors. Yeah. But it was only towards the end of Now You See Me Too that Morgan Freeman was on set, and Woody Harrelson said, Morgan, Keith is the guy who came up with all the mentalism and magic for the movie, and he can read minds. And then Morgan Freeman turned to me and looked at me and said, go on then, read my mind. So he kind of challenged me. And to be challenged by Morgan Freeman,
it's a pretty elite challenge. Like.
Yeah, but I bricked it at that moment in time. Normally my nerves don't overtake me, but it's Morgan Freeman challenging me. So anyway, I sat down and I told him, so it was a brain hack that I did on him at the time. It took a few minutes now, but ultimately the synopsis of it was that I hacked his brain and I told him about a childhood friend of his called Boo Boo, who he used to go fishing with, that he hadn't thought about in 60 years. And he freaked out, like he lost his mind. And he just started calling me all kinds of things, like all in jest, of course. But ultimately, you know, even during his scene, he kept breaking character and he kept coming over and he was like, Barry. So he called me Barry, right? And he was like, Barry, can you find dead people? Are you that kind of guy? So he thought I was psychic, I guess. So I saw that as a compliment. And ultimately, John Chu, who's the director of the movie, he captured that moment that had happened on a camera. So again, up on my Instagram page, actually, if people scroll back a little bit, I'm literally just at Keith Barry on Instagram. They'll find that photograph of the exact moment that I hacked into Morgan Freeman's mind. So they're the 2 that really stand out, you know?
Yeah, and on the first one, and then I want to ask you about Morgan a little bit more in depth, but I can't help but notice when I watched the clip back of you driving the car with Nicole Scherzinger in it, how do you convince a producer or her agent that it's going to be okay, but like, you know, or maybe not. Like, how, I watch it and I'm thinking, how did they say, okay, yeah, this is cool, let's just go with it?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because very often these huge celebrities, Hollywood celebrities, they've got a lot of agents, lawyers, all these different people that you got to get through to get to the person. But weirdly, that one time, Nicole's manager, certainly back then, was just like, so, and we didn't even, so we told him what the bit was, but we asked him not to tell her. So we said, look, we're going to meet you up at the top of a canyon road. We'll have a production company there with cameras and everything else. And I'm going to drive her blindfolded down the canyon road at 60 miles an hour. And at that one moment in time, her manager just went, this sounds awesome. Go for it. Brilliant. And he just didn't even ask any questions. And I'm used to having to go through health and safety and lawyers and managers and agents. And there's normally 5 layers that you have to peel off before you get to that moment. But that one actually was particularly easy, right? It just happened, and it worked out to be an amazing piece of television. But other times aren't as easy, but that was one of the easier ones.
And when you were driving the car, obviously, with her in the passenger seat, there's a couple of variables because she's screaming her head off. You're probably trying to, I'm going to say, remember the corners. Or was there any point where you were like, for a split second, not in control? You're kind of...
yeah. I mean, I remember at the end of it, it's not on camera, but at the end of it, I remember exactly what she said. I still laugh about it. She said to me that I got so close to the canyon edge that she could spit over the canyon edge. That's actually what she said. But the producers didn't want to put that in because they thought it'd be too uncouth looking for Nicole Scherzinger to be talking about spitting over a cliff. But anyway, ultimately, I mean, look, with these things, people don't understand. Like, a lot of people in my business have been injured, maimed, and sometimes killed. I mean, there's one person, you can actually, it's up on YouTube. There's a poor guy who did a very old stunt in magic called Buried Alive. And he was doing it with cement on top of a glass coffin that he was in. And you can see it. You can just see the cement gets too heavy on the coffin, and you just see this pop. And all the cement goes in on top, and unfortunately the guy dies. So there's a huge amount of accidents that happen in the magic world. So if any one thing goes wrong, you can be in big trouble. I think for me, the most concerning thing is actually what you said. It's the person next to me, because if she decides to freak out so much that she grabs the steering wheel or starts to slap me in the face or anything like that, variables that you can't really allow for you. You can preempt them. But if they happen in the moment, there's nothing to say that I won't overreact and turn into a cliff or turn off the cliff or whatever. So they're the kind of things, they're the variables. And look, I'm covered in injuries from all the different stunts that I've done over the years. I'm battered and bruised like you wouldn't believe,
Is there any standout kind of stunt or trick that you've done where you've had that voice in your mind saying, this could be the one that, really, really goes south?
Yeah. Like, well, a lot of them have gone south over the years, but like there was one that I filmed a couple of years ago for one of my TV shows. It was for my Brain Hacker TV show, and I was frozen in a ton of ice for 47 minutes to induce a near-death experience, which sounds nuts, I'm sure, to people listening to this.
Sounds nuts here, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I did. And, they pulled me out after 47 minutes and, it wasn't good, let's put it that way. But afterwards, and this isn't well reported, I didn't really talk about it, but I got really sick for 3 weeks. And I'm talking about really, really ill at home for 3 weeks. Eventually, I got the bloods done, and the bloods came back all clear on Christmas Eve that year, actually. But ultimately, my doctor reckons from lying on the ice for 47 minutes that my kidneys had shut down temporarily. And that's why I was so sick for 3 weeks afterwards. And then your kidneys can just kind of recuperate themselves. So they did just recuperate. So by the time I got the bloods done, they were ultimately probably better. But that was one that I look back on and go, that was just stupid. Like, it wasn't like I wouldn't be going doing that anytime again. It was just stupid, And then I suppose, injury wise, I've got so many injuries from all these different things, but one was a more recent one, actually. I don't regret doing it, but again, you just look back and you go, oh, okay, that injury's from that, and was hanging upside down for, my most recent show, the Keith Barry Experience for RTE. So about a year and a half ago, I was hanging upside down outside the RTE studios, 150 foot in the air with a straight jacket on and my head wrapped in a full wrap of cling film. And by thrashing around upside down and not being able to get oxygen in, I pulled all of my muscles off my rib cage. So my muscles detached from my rib cage. Jeez. So here as I stand as I stand here in front of you a couple of years later, I still have to go to physio for my rib cage. I go to Enda McNulty out in the sports surgery clinic. So yeah, and I've got impingements under both shoulders, degenerative back, like, you know, the list goes on. But like when you're in the business and you do these stupid things, you know, injury is pretty much a certain thing, you know.
And I think I remember seeing a few years ago on the stage at the Olympia, you were cling filmed.
Yeah.
And then you passed out. That's one that I remember. And I think that one really did the rounds, like, because you're saying with obviously the shutdown of your kidneys, you know, that's the aftermath. But that time in the Olympia, it was like it was in front of everyone. You know, you just passed out. Do you remember that one well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, when you're doing escapes, particularly, look, a magic trick. If I'm doing a sleight of hand magic trick with a deck of cards, I pretty much know the outcome is going to be dead certain, because I know that my sleight of hand is good enough and I know I've practiced enough. But with escapology, there's a massive amount of variables that you can't allow for. So that one particular time, it was during my 8 Deadly Sins show, and I was under the sin of greed. And the whole idea was to get 2 random people from the audience, give them 100-foot of rope, and they were allowed to tie me any way they wanted to a chair, as tightly as they wanted to a chair. And the game was that if I couldn't get out less time than they tied me up in, they got €500 each. So that was the incentive for them, and under the sin of greed, to see how greedy they were. And that would be the incentive for them to tie me really tightly, which they would do every single night. But this one night, when the guy came up, it turns out that he is a sailor, almost like a professional sailor. So you need all these kind of weird sailing knots that I wasn't familiar with. So he tied me in all these sailing knots, and then ultimately, as you mentioned, they wrapped my head in cling film as well. And I got into trouble pretty early because I couldn't get my hands out. And it's essential that you unlock your hands to begin with. And I couldn't get them out. And very often, to try and get some slack, you would kick over the chair, which I did that night. But when I kicked over the chair, I winded myself. And I went to suck in air. And that's when I sucked in a mouthful of cling film instead. Yeah. And all I remember after that is just blackness, just completely passing out. And then I woke up backstage with my manager popping holes in the cling film, and then I was just puking backstage, and the curtains came down. Everybody thought it was part of the show, of course. Yeah. But I realized it wasn't. But actually, the funny thing is, you know, at the end of the show, the 2 guys who had tied me up, they came to the stage door, put their hands out, and they
looked for their 500.
Yeah, and we paid them their €500 all that as well. They got €500 each that night.
That's mad. And taking it kind of back to the very start of, I'm going to say, your career, or even further back, was there a moment when you were younger where you realized that you had an ability, you know, to understand the human mind maybe in a deeper way than I would, for example?
Yeah, well, I started magic when I was 8. Well, sorry, I started magic when I was 5 or 6, but then I started to perform magic when I was about 8. And at that stage, I just loved it. And I suppose I was just trying to find myself and be an entertainer. And then when I was 15 or 16 was when I started to really perform magic in a paid environment. So I started to do everything from the boats to Roscoff and Cherbourg and France, doing kids magic. And then I was doing close-up magic, and I was doing stage magic and all this kind of stuff. So I was quite young when I was doing all that. But really, I suppose it delved deeper into the human psyche and mind, which is when I was in college in Galway, where I was studying chemistry, and my girlfriend, then it was my wife now, she was studying psychology. And that's when I started to read more of her psychology books really than she was reading. And that's when I learned to become a professional hypnotherapist. That's when I got obsessed, if you like, with the subconscious mind and the capabilities of the subconscious mind, you know. And
you touched there kind of on psychology, and even back when you were speaking about performing for Morgan Freeman, you're talking about psychics. When people ask you for kind of an evaluation, you know, that would be of that, like that of a psychic, do you ever do you ever give it straight away, or do you always kind of hold back? Like, what's your opinion on, I'm going to say, psychics as opposed to hypnotists, if you will?
Yeah, like, I'm very outspoken about it, and I don't really hold back. You know, for me, I've studied psychics, I've studied psychic techniques for a long time, and people don't understand the techniques that they're using, and it makes it look like they can potentially read minds. but they use a whole load of techniques called cold reading, hot reading, rainbow reading. There's all these different techniques that psychics use in order to fool the human mind into believing that they're truly psychic. And for me, the majority, not all, I will say, the majority of them are charlatans, and they just want to take your money and pretend that they're talking to your dead loved ones, or tell you something about your future, or whatever it is. And then there is a small minority of them that are what we call shut-eyes. So a shut-eye is actually somebody who believes that they're psychic, even if they're not, which is crazy. And the funny thing is, a lot of people out there listening to this perhaps might say, oh, but they don't do any harm, they offer comfort. Well, actually, that's not true. They're interfering with the natural grieving process that we all have to go through in order to get over the death of a loved one. That can be a very dangerous thing. Some psychics have actually taken massive amounts of money from people, like up to, I've heard stories in the US where people remortgage their houses to pay their psychics for advice. And then some of these psychics offer health advice as well. So some people stop taking their medication based on the advice that a so-called psychic has given them. And, for me, it's wrong, it's immoral. And the difference between that and what I do is I tell you, I'm using sound psychological techniques. I'm using scientific techniques. I'm using deception, magic. I'm using all of these different techniques to entertain you. Now, with that being said, I'm also a motivational speaker where, I use my I suppose, studies of the human mind to alter people's perception of reality. I also assist people to bring them to peak performance, but I use sound scientific techniques. Hypnosis is absolutely a scientific technique at this stage in life. If you just look online, or if you do a bit of study on it, they're actually using hypnosis as pain management for open heart surgery now in the US. And then even here, I hypnobirthed our son Braden into this world, meaning Mairead didn't use any epidural, she didn't use any painkillers. I just hypnotized her to deal with the pain.
That's unbelievable to hear, the power of hypnosis. And for people who are kind of listening at home and don't know what exactly hypnosis is, can you kind of explain the difference between, let's say, sleep and hypnosis, if you will, or being under hypnotic trance?
Yeah, they're very different, and there's different levels of sleep. There's alpha, beta, theta, but on a very simplistic level, hypnosis is really quietening down the conscious mind, or slowing down the conscious mind to the extent that I can then bypass it and enter into the subconscious mind and alter what's going on subconsciously. Because ultimately, your subconscious mind looks after your heart rate, your blood flow, your breathing, basically your autonomic nervous system. And, it was thought for a long time that you couldn't access that. But it was found then that through hypnosis, you can access the subconscious mind, and then you can alter people's subconscious regulations for their autonomic nervous system. So it can help for everything from anxiety, stress, right through to eczema, pain management, sleep, injuries. All of these things can be assisted by using hypnosis,
And we've seen, you perform hypnosis, on lots, in lots of places. I've seen it on CBS, MTV, ITV, and the Discovery Channel, on your various TV shows and just shows in general. Do you have a favorite television show you've done, or a favorite television project you've done?
Yeah, I've done, it's weird. I tried to count it up one time, and I lost track after 100 hours of my own television. It's crazy, actually. If I look back over all the years, I've done a lot. But I think one of my favorites would have been the Black Ops hypnosis episode of my Discovery Channel show, Deception, with Keith Barry. Because in that Black Ops hypnosis episode, I really pushed the envelope with regards to hypnosis and what is and isn't possible. And when I started that project, I didn't know the answers to those questions. So it was an amazing journey for me personally to see how far I could push hypnosis. And towards the end of it, it really did change my mind on hypnosis, because I now believe that you can properly program people to do things against their morals and their values. You can get people, a certain percentage of the population, a very small percentage, but a percentage nonetheless, you could turn into a sleeper agent, 100%. So you could actually get them to murder somebody, and then they'd forget it, because you would have programmed them. And that's what that show was about. Again, I think you can find it up on YouTube. Black Ops Hypnosis Deception with Keith Barry, and that would be my favorite episode because it blew my mind as to what was possible. I mean, by the end of it, I turned a person into a sleeper agent, and they didn't know. They had no idea that they were a part of a hypnosis show. They actually thought they were a part of a sleep experiment, is what they'd signed up for. So they knew they were on camera to a certain extent, but they thought they were a part of a sleep experiment. They had no idea that they were actually being set up to murder somebody, which ultimately they did. But you have to kind of look at the episode to see how it plays out, you know?
Yeah, and like, it's crazy to see the control that you can grasp on the person, you know, with their susceptibility to hypnosis. Is there a standout kind of hypnosis story that you tell as being like the most mental thing you made someone do, or the most just bizarre thing? Like, as you said, you're pushing out the envelope. Is there something that you always remember when in hypnosis that you did to someone and just thought that is the furthest this can go?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the two that we've already mentioned. I mean, the furthest that I could go was to have enough trust and ability in myself and in hypnosis to actually use that as a pain management tool for my wife, who was about to give birth to what turned out to be like a 10-pound baby.
It's crazy.
And then also turning somebody into a sleeper agent. So they're the two clear standout moments for me with hypnosis. But again, there's other things that, you know, I've done that I don't really talk too much about, but like I've assisted people with psychosomatic injuries before. You know, I've assisted people with stutters. So it ended up, a segment of it ended up in my Discovery Channel show, but ultimately there was a guy that I came across who had a stutter, and it turns out he'd had the stutter for like, you know, all his life, 25 years. And within, I'm going to say 3 minutes, I had him completely speaking fluently with no stutter. So that was an amazing moment for me. So when you assist people, I suppose, with injuries and with, I suppose, issues that they've had all their lives, it's very gratifying when that happens, you know?
Yeah, and, you know, speaking and kind of staying on injuries, and we were talking about some of the injuries you've sustained in your career before this, but in 2007 you were involved in, you know, quite a substantial car accident where you sustained, you know, quite a large injury. Can you talk to me about how you bounced back from that, or kind of recovered from that and got back on stage? I think it was on Vicar Street within months.
Yeah. So I had a big accident coming back from Jim Aiken's funeral, and ultimately of Aiken Promotions. And ultimately I was in a head-on car collision, and I was doing about 60 miles an hour, and the other guy was doing about 60 miles an hour. So you're talking about 120 collision head-on. And when I looked down, my knee was broken, my tibia and fibia were disintegrated, and my ankle was dislocated, and my metatarsals to my toes were broken as well. So ultimately, you know, I was 5 minutes from amputation at one stage that night.
Wow.
But look, I managed to get my foot back in its place. And then I was transferred up to the Royal Vic, where they rebuilt my leg. So I was up there for 3.5 weeks, and I was sent out of there with a full leg cast. And then they told me I'd have a limp for the rest of my life. But I speak about resilience a lot in my keynotes. And I've learned a lot about resilience over years. And actually, at that exact moment in time, rather than thinking, why me? And rather than whinging and moaning about it, I accepted it in that very moment. And that's what resilient people do. They accept that bad things sometimes happen to good people. So in my head, I was just like, immediately accept it, and then magnify the positive, and then take massive action to heal my leg. So I decided to go on this journey of massive action. So what that meant for me at that moment in time is, you know, figuring out in my head, where's the best physios, not in Ireland, but in the world. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, they have to be looking after footballers because they're the most expensive athletes in the world. So I pulled strings, and I went over to Anfield for physio. And ultimately I came back on 2 crutches, but out of the wheelchair. And then I went back a few weeks later, and I came back on 1 crutch. And then I rang Brian O'Driscoll, who was the captain of the rugby team at the time. Yeah. And I said, best physio in Ireland. And then he sent me into Mark McCabe on South Suffolk Street, and I was in with him. And then ultimately, like you mentioned, about 3.5, 4 months after the accident, I was back on stage in Vicar Street with no limp. And that's what I'm a proponent of, is first of all, resilience, and then coupled with massive action. And that's really what got me back on my feet. Now I still have to go to physio to this very day. So like 13 years later, I'm not saying that I have no problems with my leg, but I am saying that I have no limp. And that came from that resilience coupled with that massive action, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, watching your appearances on television, your live shows, I think the resilience lies underneath all your performances. I've seen how hard you work. You've got a great work ethic. I see behind you the set of a show that you've adapted to this online world we're living in. You've adapted to one of the weirdest times of all time. But before I cheekily ask you maybe if you could perform a magic trick, I just want to know what's next for Keith Barry, in lockdown and maybe after lockdown, for a live show or another television special maybe.
Well, it's a good question. So first of all, when is this airing? When is this going out?
This is airing on the 20th of November.
So here we are, 20th of November. My next aim is to be on the Graham Norton show before Christmas. So that's in my head. So Graham Norton, I'm coming for you. I want to be on Graham Norton. It'll probably have to be virtual, of course. And then with regards to television, so look, I'm still actively working behind the scenes with RTE in the hope that we can record something within government guidelines and safety guidelines and all the rest, hopefully early next year. So the plan is to do something there. And then also I'm working on some US TV shows as well. So the second the door opens back up over there, I'll be jumping on a plane and going back there and hopefully doing some TV over there. So, a couple of different TV shows kind of, I suppose, floating out there. For me, though, right now, it's all about speed trumps perfection every time now, in the moment that we're in. So I pivoted online. I've got a New Year's Eve show on sale now, as well as the Christmas show, virtual, of course. And then I suppose, again, I'm not being too hard on myself either. I've set down my long-term, my short-term, my crazy goals, but also being flexible in the moment. So yeah, some TV shows hopefully next year. I'm going to write a book as well, like my first hardcover book. I've already started that. So that'll be called The Brain Hacker's Handbook, How to Hack Your Own Subconscious Mind. So start writing that as well. So look, tons of different projects, and then doing loads and loads virtually, of course, because we're going to be in this for a little while longer, I think. I'll know that, especially now that now that Christmas is coming and everyone's going to go out and go crazy, and then we'll all be in lockdown again in January and February with the way our government are dealing with it, at least. So yeah, I'll be performing loads online as well,
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for it, and I mean, it's a testament to you. I rang you up a few weeks ago to ask would you do an episode, and it was really lovely for me to hear you say I'll do it, but I'm really busy at the moment, which is awesome, because the guests who I've had on before this episode have been like, yeah, I'll do it, things are a bit quiet at the moment, but you've adapted to the online and it's fantastic. So
yeah, thanks. It's nuts. I think sometimes when people say they're busy, behind the scenes people go, oh, but is he really busy? I mean, literally I'm working 18 hours a day, and I'm in the cabin probably for 16 hours of that 18 hours. So actually, yeah, touch wood, look, I'm really busy. I don't take it for granted either, but, I think just if I can say anything to the people listening to this or watching this, the one thing I would say is it doesn't matter what happens to you in life. It's how you react that matters. And if you can get that into your head, it's really true. And that's true of even if your business got decimated in COVID, it's not what happens to you. It's how you react. And if your business is gone, you got to get up, you got to get at it, and you got to create a new business. What I did here, it's not easy. I'm not saying that it's easy. There's many performers out there who are unemployed right now. And luckily I'm in a position now that I'm starting to give some of them some work online. But ultimately, I said it to my wife the other day. I was like, if they take away the electricity, I'll figure that out. It's one gear and it's forward, and that's it. You know what I mean? So that's what I'd say to people. Just attain that resilience. And again, we hear about this thing, be kind. And, I hate seeing what's going on online at the moment, with all the different politics. Everyone's very quick to react. And everyone's very quick to throw out the hate there. And a few months ago, as you know, like Caroline Flack took her own life, and everybody was like, be kind. And then I said it to a few people at the time, this will last a week. And I was right. And actually we're in a moment now where people are actually being more hateful than ever. and more angry than ever. And they can say they have a right to be angry, but actually they're being angry at the wrong people too. So I would say just take a step back and actually be kind to yourself for a moment, first and foremost, and then be kind to other people. But anyway, that's my little rant to finish it off, our little talk. But I'll show you a little experiment if you like.
I'd love to see it. Thanks so much. Let's see it.
Okay, so look, way before your time, back in my time, in 1980, I was 4 years of age, and I got one of these, a Rubik's Cube. Now, there are 43 quintillion variations to a Rubik's Cube. Now, what that really means, Mikey, is if I was to turn the cube 1 turn per second, okay, that's 60 turns per minute, that's 3,600 turns per hour, that's 86,400 turns per day. Now, what that means is, if we were to start turning the cube 1 turn per second since before time even began, that means you still wouldn't have turned it 43 quintillion times. And that is the amount of variation there are to a cube. But here's the idea. I'm going to mix it, and you just say stop anytime you want to make sure it really is mixed, okay?
Yep. Stop.
There. Okay, you happy that's mixed, or do you want to mix it some more?
No, I'm happy. That looks very mixed up.
Okay, now here's the crazy thing about Rubik's Cubes. There are 43 quintillion variations, but actually there's a thing called God's number. God's number means that every cube can be solved in less than 20 moves. And I know by the way you've mixed this, believe it or not, this can be solved in less than 4 moves, and you're going to do it right now, virtually. Do you believe you can do it, by the way?
I hope so. I don't know. 4 moves. Okay. Let's have a look.
I'll close my eyes. Do you want to start at the top, bottom, front, back, left, right, or middle?
Let's go to the front.
Clockwise or anti-clockwise?
Anti-clockwise.
How many moves?
2.
1, 2. Top, bottom, front, back, left, right, or middle?
Top.
Clockwise or anti-clockwise?
We'll go clockwise this time.
How many moves?
3.
1, 2, 3. 2 moves left. Do you want to see it from a different angle, or are you happy with this angle?
I'll see it from a different angle. I don't mind which.
Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
There?
Yep, sure.
Okay, top, bottom, front, back, left, right, or middle?
Left.
Forwards or backwards?
Backwards.
How many moves?
1.
Done. Okay, 1 move left. Top, bottom, front, back, left, right, or middle?
Left.
Okay, forwards or backwards?
Backwards again.
How many moves?
2.
1, 2. 43 quintillion variations, and in just 4 moves, Mikey, you solved. Oh. Well, if I do
quite worked.
If I do this 43 quintillion times, then eventually it'll work. But what if I told you, Mike, you did something more impossible? You see, when I see 43 quintillion problems, I see 43 quintillion solutions. But it's not the way you look at problems, it's the way you perceive them. Because back here, I've got another Rubik's Cube. And I'm going to bring these up so you can really kind of see them. Look, check this out. Can you see that those 2 sides match, Mikey?
Yes.
You match my Rubik's Cube. Now, the odds of that happening are 1 in 43 quintillion times 1 in 43 quintillion, right? Just for that side there. But you didn't just do 1 side, Mikey. You did 2 sides of the Rubik's Cube. But you didn't just do 2 sides. You did 3 sides of the Rubik's Cube, Mikey. You didn't just do 3, Mikey. You did 4. That's 5. That's 6. That's 43 quintillion times 43 quintillion times 4. You get the idea. That's a miracle, Mikey. How you did it, I'll never know.
That's amazing. And that's been in view the whole interview.
Yeah, the whole time it was over there. So pre-conscious processing is the processing of information through your subconscious mind. And that's what happened. You picked up on the pattern over there and you matched it over here.
Keith, thank you so much. Thank you for doing the trick. Thank you for coming on Back Chat. Guys, check out Keith's Instagram at Keith Barry and look at Eventbrite to buy tickets to the online show. You're not going to want to miss it. It's absolutely spectacular to see more tricks like you just saw there, plus more. Check Eventbrite. And I think the next one is December 23rd.
December 23rd, and then New Year's Eve as well at 7 p.m.
Awesome, Keith. Thanks so much. And until next Friday, see you, Back Chat.